Well, welcome to today's CCPI entitled Strategies for Administrative Turnover During ATE Proposal or Project. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, and it's my pleasure to be co-PI of the ATE project entitled Community College President's Initiative in STEM Education, fondly known as CCPI STEM. It's also my pleasure to serve as today's moderator. The webcast is being recorded for placement on our website at ccipi-stem.org. You can see that URL on the slide at the bottom. This will be our 10th CCPI episode, so you can review the other 9 CCPI. And the presentation slides are already out there. Actually, I made a mistake. It's actually our 11th. There are 10 episodes out there. This is our 3rd year doing this. So I've already mentioned this, but anybody who is joining now, please, we got somebody coming in here. All right, please make sure your audio is muted and put your name and affiliation in the chat box. Throughout the presentation and at the end, we will pause to take questions. So if you have a question, just put it in the chat box. We'll be watching that. Hopefully Dr. Dukes will be around to help me monitor the chat box. I see your head nodding. Okay. And we'll read aloud the questions to the presenters. So just hold your questions. We'll get to those. Okay. We see 3 people in the waiting room. All right. So if you want to get the slides, they're out there now. It's ccipi-stem.org/webcast/podcast and scroll all the way down to the 11th episode. Okay. People are coming in. All right, so today's speakers, we're really excited to have a distinguished panel for you today. We are joined with Dr. Dan Phelan, who is president of Jackson College in Michigan, and he is also the regional network chair for the CCPI STEM Midwest region, and he was one of the first to join the CCPI STEM project, so we really appreciate your leadership in the Midwest region, Dr. Phelan. Also today, we are joined by Dr. Linnea Fletcher, who is the PI of a national biotechnology education center called Innovate ATE Bio. She also was the department chair of the biology technology department at Austin Community College, Texas. And I think, Linnea, you still are serving as chair, so you have a couple different hats. And we have Dr. Kevin Cooper, who is currently PI of Project Vision and several other grants, including electric vehicles and energy. He is academic dean at Indian River State College in Florida. And again, I'm serving as the moderator. I am a co-PI of CCPI STEM, principal investigator of Force ATE, which is a mentoring initiative, senior professor emeriti of computer science and cybersecurity at Union College in New Jersey. Okay, so today's topics, Dr. Dukes is going to lead us off and give us an overview of the key initiatives of the CCPI STEM project. Then we're going to move right into our panel discussion and talk about the strategies to maintaining momentum of either an ATE proposal or project if the college administration changes. So I mentioned to you before that I'm PI of Force, which is a mentoring initiative. And we have 13 teams that we're trying to get to the finish line in 2 weeks for the October 3rd submission date for their proposal. And we unfortunately had 2 teams that had this happen to them. College administration changed. They're in the proposal development stage, and they just said, we can't submit this October. We're going to try for next October, 2025. So it's a real thing that happens. Okay, then I'm going to do a little infomercial about the forthcoming CCPI, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience, and we'll have a brief poll. Okay, so without further ado, Dr. Dukes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hawthorne, and welcome certainly to our panelists, other members of the CCPI STEM Community College President's Initiative and STEM leadership team who are joining us today, as well as other regional network chairs, regional coordinators, and certainly our fellows. And I'll talk a little bit about each of those. But I think the first thing that's really most important to understand is that the National Science Foundation recognizes the role that community colleges can play, and rightfully so, as we continue to think about diversification in the STEM field by race, by gender, by orientation, by region, by geographic locations, but also thinking about it from the perspective of what the participation in NSF grants, and particularly the advanced technological education grants, can do as community colleges across the nation continue to think about and actually introduce innovation and transformation in their STEM programs. So what we've worked and opted to do over the course of these last 3 years and going into our 4th year of the grant is to really galvanize trustees, presidents, academic administrators, and other leaders to understand how important it is across community college campuses to support the grants initiatives, and certainly to think about it from the perspective of what we can contribute to the workforce across this nation and across U.S. territories. So there are a number of things that we do in order for that to happen. We have a national advisory board that's comprised of our major associations, the League for Innovation in the Community College and the Association of Community College Trustees. We have 3 presidents who have been just some of the exemplars when you think about the number of NSF ATE grants that they've had on their campuses over the course of their careers. Dr. Annette Parker, who is the president of South Central College in Minnesota, Dr. David Harrison, the president of Columbus State Community College in Ohio, and Dr. Sylvia Jenkins, who is president emerita of Moraine Valley Community College in Illinois. So, and Dr. Jenkins in her emeritus has actually joined the CCPI STEM leadership team as our business industry liaison. So we do expect over the course of this next year to add more members to the National Advisory Board, because it is their thought leadership that keeps us focused on the work. And we expect to add at least 2 to 3 business industry representatives. We have a series of regional networks. You've already heard that Dr. Dan Phelan is one of our regional network chairs. We are in 7 regions across the country and in some U.S. territories as of today. By the time we get to mid-year of this 24-25 year, actually, we expect to have the entire map covered in terms of the United States and any other U.S. territories that might be missing. So we are from American Samoa to Puerto Rico and everything in between. And they are led by current or former presidents who are really working within those regions to introduce institutions to this initiative in STEM and the kind of work that it can bring to the work that faculty, department chairs, and others are doing on their campuses in terms of program transformation. The one thing that I would also want to say is, of the number of grants that are awarded, probably through this program, probably about 20 to 25% are awarded to the nation's community colleges. And quite frankly, many of those are repeat awards. So some of the colleges that we've named have had multiple awards. So they certainly have a grounding in the National Science Foundation's commitment, and also in submitting grants that certainly receive significant dollars over periods of times to support the innovation, transformation, and contribution to the workforce that we're all looking for. We have a STEM Fellows program, and those are current administrators or faculty members who are pursuing their doctorates. They're doing research in STEM. They're faculty members in STEM, and they want to have a lasting commitment to the field, not just of research, but of teaching and learning in these areas. And as a matter of fact, I think our last applications for the CCPI STEM Fellows program might be by the end of September. So if you go to our website, www.ccpi-stem.org, you will see the materials. And if you're interested, please apply. We offer a number of, we've developed a number of instructional curriculum modules so you understand what needs to happen from the day you start thinking. Is this something that we want to pursue? And what are all the steps that you should have in place? What's the thinking you should be going through? And then how do you ensure that you get a grant, but you also are able to implement, maintain, evaluate, and be successful in that process? We offer a number of sippy cast. We've sort of coined that phrase, and you're on one now. So all of those, the upcoming ones are featured on our website, and I'm sure that Dr. Hawthorne may call a few out before we end the call today. President's Press, it's a document that we produce probably quarterly. So please, you can go back and look at all of that information on the website. And I would say, as I end, one of the really important things that we do is we have national, regional, and local dialogues around what community colleges need and want in order to be successful in this endeavor. What does it mean to even begin to think about applying for a grant? And then what are all of the things that you need to have in place, both in terms of support and human resources to support the grant? And then what are the mentoring programs that exist to help you both walk through it, talk you through it, and end up successfully being successful at the end of the process? So I would stop there because I think that we are most interested in hearing from our panelists today, and then we'll be prepared at the appropriate time to answer any questions that you might have. I'll turn it back to you, Dr. Hawthorne.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dukes. Okay, so now we're on to the heart of our Sippy cast, and it's our questions for our distinguished panelists. So I'm going to ask Dr. Phelan to lead us off and provide a brief summary of you and your college's experience with ATE grants. I know your college went through 2 of the mentoring initiatives and were successful. And what are the benefits and recognition that your college has received, Jackson College, by having these AT awards?
Thank you, Dr. Hawthorne. I appreciate the opportunity to join you and my honorable colleagues here on the CCPI cast. We have been about this business, at least for me, it's been more of a personal and professional quest to be able to benefit from NSF funding. Having served, this is my third rural institution, rural community college, where we have been trying for years and years to be able to get NSF grants. Served in Nebraska and Iowa, and we routinely went after NSF grants. I will admit that we were smaller institutions. My service in Nebraska, my service in Iowa, we were a couple thousand students, and that was the total. So you might imagine that the resources weren't as extensive as we would like them to be. We tried contracting out some grant writing work, but by and large, we did this work internally. And so it was just it was a bit of a challenge for us as we would put in considerable effort. What we thought we were doing was on board. We followed all of the ideas and thoughts that had been shared with us, what we could learn about NSF grant application. We even talked to peers to try to understand what they were doing, but we were unsuccessful. I met Jackson College in Michigan. We serve about 8,000 credit students a year. And again, we have tried for NSF grants and we have been unsuccessful. But that all changed when the CCPI STEM program was initiated through a very generous grant through NSF to be able to allow a different way for helping community colleges go after the funding. I remember even having served like Dr. Dukes on the AACC board, the American Association of Community Colleges Board of Directors, and we would hear representatives coming from NSF saying, we need more community colleges to apply. And I was thinking, and even having conversations with some of the leaders, we are. But it wasn't until CCPI STEM from NSF was created that Jackson College actually became successful. Not immediately, but we became successful overall with 2 NSF grants. And it has been a game changer. It helped us to clarify the way we went about pursuing an NSF grant. It allowed us to have the deeper understanding of the preparations of a proposal. Third, it allowed us to provide professional development for our faculty and our grant writers in the work. That made a big difference. It created a shared commitment on the part of NSF and our institution to be able to think about how do we get this done. And I have been very, very gratified by the fact that this works. This works. And for someone who has been, I'm in my 24th year at Jackson College, and a number of other years in Iowa and in Nebraska. So I've been about trying to get an NSF grant for decades. And there's only one differentiator, and it is CCPI STEM. And when we received both of those grants, one dealing with blockchain technology, and the second one with dealing with manufacturing 4.0, we were all elated. Our faculty were elated, our business partners were elated, our community, our board, and we've just been so excited about that. And now the real work is beginning, as you might imagine. So let me pause at that point and see, Dr. Hawthorne, if there are other things you'd like me to hit there.
That was fantastic, and you really have a testament to the SIPI STEM program, as well as the mentoring sister projects of Force, and I believe it was Mentor Up that helped you with the manufacturing grant, and then Force helped you with the blockchain grant. I know that it took 2 tries for the blockchain, but kudos to your faculty and dean for persevering to the second round. So we're so excited that you have success to tout to the rest of the community college community. Okay, I'm going to ask the same question of Dr. Linnea Fletcher. Give us a brief summary of your experience with ATE and at your colleges, and what recognition and benefits has that been for your colleges to have the ATE awards?
Well, I'll say that I was the second ATE grant awarded to my institution. I mailed it in 1999. And from that point on, we essentially got very involved with other ATE initiatives. So it's from my personal experience in biotechnology. My school has had other ATEs, but I haven't necessarily been involved in the other areas. But when we started, essentially, the school had not had any experience in ATE grants. They had only done state grants. And from that point on, we started to do more ATE. Now, within the area of biotech, I immediately got involved with the first center grant in biotechnology. I didn't even have a biotech program, but through that center grant, my charge was to start my program based on all the best practices from around the nation. And we quickly realized by being involved with an ATE center and being involved with ATE, you learn all the best practices that are going on across the nation within that discipline if you're trying to start a workforce program. So we quickly adopted the model of, if you write a grant, it's the best way to start a program. If it's an ATE, you get to learn what everybody's doing across the nation. I'll give you one example of another benefit that people wouldn't realize. So then when I was part of the first center grant, and now I am essentially PI of the second center grant, I learned about that community colleges have incubators, literally combining economic development with education. And I learned about it at a meeting at St. Louis, who has an incubator. And I turned around and I went back to the state of Texas and got involved with the Governor's Bioscience Council. So I learned this through ATE. And by doing that, I brought the idea forward to my president, was eventually becomes a chancellor, Dr. Rhodes. He liked the idea, and eventually we got a state grant to build an incubator, a state grant for $6 million to build an incubator. And our community college adopted took over a mall and the incubators in what used to be Dillard's. So just through ATE, we learned so much about what others are doing that we can turn around and apply to the school in different areas. Now, I will tell you what's really interesting at this point, being head of a center grant at a community college in biotechnology, even our accounting office, the way they administer grants is that any biotech grant at the school essentially comes under my area. So now when others go for grants within a certain area, it literally comes under that department's area. So then you have further coordination. So if you think about it, having ATE grants has permeated even how they're managed fiscally at the community college. So we continue to spread the word about ATE through the college, and I continue to get major support from my C-suite.
Wonderful, Linnea. You mentioned a couple times about National Center Grant. So some of us on the call may not know kind of the progression, that you can't just jump into a National Center Grant, that you start small with maybe a new to ATE grant. And I know that you just told me that you had done a rotation at the National Science Foundation in ATE. So can you just take a few minutes to kind of explain the kind of differences of the projects and centers that ATE offers?
Sure. So you can get a project grant through ATE. Right now they are up to $1 million, and they're much smaller. A center grant is supposed to be national in focus. A project is usually focusing on one area of a technology, possibly on one emerging technology aspect. Like for example, you could be doing biomanufacturing just locally, meeting the needs of your industry locally, and you write an ATE grant to develop the needs of your program to meet the needs of industry in your area. Very small. A national center grant, on other hand, is supposed to know what's going on across the entire nation for a discipline, Mines Biotech, which is rather large. And there's over 130 biotech programs in the nation, plus their high schools and articulated four-year schools. And my job is to help all of them essentially produce a technical workforce in biotechnology. And to get to a center, you have to learn how to be able to manage locally and then move up within the grants. And it wasn't just one grant, it was several grants. Now, I was lucky that I became involved with a center grant initially, and they trained me to look at the national point of view. But it wasn't until after 20 years of being with the first biotechnology center grant that I actually wrote for my first center grant in biotechnology. Now, these center grants, I was awarded for the first time for 5 years. I competitively had to write for the second round, and it's for another 5 years. And after 10 years, 2 times 5 years, another school will be writing a biotechnology center grant. And right now we're trying to develop leadership across the nation such there will be more than one school. There'll be several schools who'll be interested in doing the national perspective for a center. So it's very much a progression. It's going from a local to a national view, meeting the needs of industry.
Wonderful. Thank you. That was a very clear explanation. And I know that resource centers exist in different disciplines. Yours just happens to be bio. So there's a National Cybersecurity Center. And if you are interested in writing a grant biotech or cybersecurity, reach out to those centers. They will provide resources and help you with your proposal development. So they're there as a resource before you get awarded and after. So stay in touch. Okay. All right, Dr. Cooper, Kevin, I'm going to ask you the same question. Give us a little background. I know you have lots of experience in the ATE grant world.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning. I'm Kevin Cooper. My home institution is Indian River State College in South Florida. We've had a lot of success over the years in the AT community. We've had nuclear grants, electric vehicle grants, national centers, project grants. We're co-PI on several other projects, SCADA. We've had an AI grant. a quantum grant, a laser grant. And probably the biggest thing to take away is once you get adopted into this community, you become actually part of the NSF AT community. So that's my biggest takeaway, and you become part of the community probably for the rest of your academic career. And I've been a center PI for 15 years now, on a couple different types of centers. And the other biggest takeaway I would mention is the question asks about recognition. NSF is very prestigious to be part of, and it does open up a lot of doors. I would say we've received about 17 million directly from ATE over the last 15 years, but probably double that from other agencies because of the relationship with NSF, from DOE, from state agencies. So it does open up a lot of doors. Three specific ones we're very proud of. Our nuclear work made it to the White House under 3 different administrations. We got to present it to 3 different presidents. We got to present it to the UN Climate Change Council, and it was written up in the National Science Board. So it's not just like little recognition, it's pretty high scale recognition that these type of AT awards offer. And now I currently run a similar mentoring organization to the ones Beth mentioned. Ours is called Project Vision. We help new presidents in areas where there's a rural or they've never had ATE support get an ATE grant. And I constantly hear from folks once they get it, how many doors it opens up with industry, how many doors it opens up with them. So that would be my biggest takeaway in terms of benefits and recognition. It's not just the finance, it's a number of doors it opens up. And more importantly, the number of industry partners it opens up to place your students. People hear about you from the press releases you send out, and they say, oh, I didn't know you had an EV program that does high voltage XYZ. Can we come interview out your students? And of course, the answer is yes. So my only thing to add from the 2 great speakers that already spoke is think about it from the recognition and how it actually serves as a catalyst to grow not just your programs, but your college's brand.
Excellent, Kevin. Excellent. I'm going to stay with you for the next question. Okay. So you talked about that you have many foci at your grant institution for these grants, ATE grants. So how was that decision was made to go for those particular grants and the different disciplines? Who was involved? You know, what are the reoccurring roles within the submission, execution, implementation, and most importantly, the leadership in the grant project?
So I'm going to answer that a little differently. At my home institution, we've been very fortunate to be involved with AT for 20 years with a very strong president that knew what AT was. But as I mentioned, we run a Project Vision, which is a mentoring organization for new to ATE, for people that haven't been involved, that don't have an indirect rate, that don't know what an AOR is and all these other things. And when we set up programs, and we've mentored about 79 different presidents in different colleges over the last 5 years to do this, we go through a very systematic approach, and it kind of revolves around the question you ask here. We work with them first, high level, C-suite folks, president and his cabinet or her cabinet, and we say, let's develop an idea that's strategic, matches your academic master plan, your industry plan, your facilities plan, your growth plan. So first, is it strategic to your college? And then number 2, is there an industry opportunity that this meets? And we ask a very set of questions. Number 3, and probably the most important one, because it's the make or break of almost every project we've ever been involved in, are there engaged and wanting faculty that want to do this and are not told to do this. So the faculty is kind of like the make or break piece. And then the last question I always ask, because this one comes and bites you, we want to help you build something that's sustainable. So is this a one-off opportunity? Is this a boutique opportunity? Or is this a large opportunity that caters to a lot of your local, workforce needs? And I'll give a very tangible example. In the EV world, you can open a program in automotive, maintenance, repair, and operation, or manufacturing if you have, but those are very boutique programs, and you're going to saturate a local market quickly. But if you look much broader, you can look at what overlaps all sectors of EV and energy, from manufacturing to electrification to fleet conversion to all these other areas to mobility. And the answer is high voltage. The answer is high voltage. A person who is skilled in high voltage can get a job in the electric industry, transmission, distribution, line worker, charging infrastructure. They can also get a job as a maintenance repair technician in automotive or in manufacturing. So when we work with the school, we first narrow in what's strategic, then is there faculty, And then is it a sustainable opportunity that will last a lifetime? So you'll have something that lasts well past the grant into eternity, in essence. I hope that answers your question, Beth.
Excellent, excellent response, Kevin. So we're going to move to President Phelan next to talk about the focus of your grants at your institution that you just got, and how was the decision made to go for those two particular grants?
Thank you, Dr. Hawthorne. Appreciate the question. So again, we were delighted to receive both of these, and to some level, they are somewhat related. In terms of the decision making and the area of focus for us, how did we come about that? We're a member of the League for Innovation of Community Colleges, and we tend to have a focus of looking forward, not only what is happening in the present reality, but where's the puck supposed to be, so to speak, to quote Wayne Gretzky. So we were looking a lot at what was happening with blockchain technology. I actually had a little bit of a bias. I have a brother-in-law who is in this field and his understanding of what blockchain technology was all about. Of course, in this day and age where we have considerable electronic violations that are happening, and in some cases there are ransoms tied to that. Looking at blockchain technology as a new way of doing business, not just for the financial industry, but really transcends literally all industries. From working in healthcare, I happen to serve on a regional hospital board of directors, and blockchain technology is at the forefront of that conversation. But also things like real estate and others. So we continue to take a look at this new and emerging technology, and innovation is like that. You want to look to the horizon and see what's out there. And we made a determination about how best to position our institution with regard to these coming technologies. And so in that regard, we decided to settle in on blockchain technology for this particular grant. We got with our faculty, we got with a relatively new grant writer that we had at our institution. We also involved other disciplines across the institution. So not just IT, which is one of the lead faculty we had involved, but also others like business administration and accounting and things such as that. They were involved from the beginning, helping us to not only understand the present reality, but also we were able to graft in their ideas, their thoughts about what this could be. So there was some consistency about the people who were involved in kind of thoughtful areas that relate to blockchain technology. And we continue to have these individuals involved. So even now, as we're unpacking the grant and the success of that, what that means for us on a practical level, these faculty, these staff, and others are involved, and we're including others as well. With regard, and I might also mention that we included business partners as well. We wanted to engage credit unions and some of the more common ones in this work, and having that kind of partnership was important. In fact, I had a meeting with our foundation board. It was just so excited about the fact that we were doing this work. Had no idea that anyone in our service region of 3 counties had anything to do with blockchain technology, and here we are out on the front end. With regard to manufacturing 4.0 or industry 4.0, again, a little bit of a parallel that exists between these particular areas. You've got automated robotics, you have security technology, manufacturing technologies. Of course, we're going to have manufacturers involved in that, so we're able to partner with a number of them, particularly as it relates to new design technologies, new disciplines, and specifically around robotics. And they continue to be with us as we think about the implementation of the grant. The leadership of the grant is really through our faculty, which is what we want. So for both manufacturing or industry 4.0 and blockchain technology, our faculty are taking the lead. That's where we want it. But we're also, from the college's point of view, from the administration's point of view, we're very careful, very thoughtful about making sure that we're not overly taxing industry partners, but we want their voice. We want to know that the curriculum that we're developing is going to be beneficial for them, and that the graduates that we're able to provide are able to be effective in their field. Now, we're also very mindful of the transfer opportunities. So as students complete an associate's degree with us, as they transfer to, say, the University of Michigan or Miami of Ohio or other places, we want to make sure that the learning and the building blocks, to borrow the block term from blockchain, that what they're getting here is actually going to be amplified and is going to dovetail nicely with four-year institutions. So we've also had that communication conduit as part of this discussion as well.
Great, thank you. I know that the PIs, the faculty PIs of the blockchain are so excited. They're like over the moon. And it sounds like I was really glad to hear you're saying that the faculty are in the lead, but your institution is supporting them. And that's
Absolutely.
exactly the way it should be. Okay, Linnea, you want to bring us home on this question? I know Austin Community College has more than just the biotech grant. Can you speak a little bit to that as well?
Well, they have like several different grants in different areas, so they get funding from a variety of sources. But one thing I wanted to mention, Beth, you're right. I was a program officer for 2 years at NSF and ATE, but I did learn about other grants while I was at NSF. And our institution, as a result, has also had STEM grants, other branches of NSF, and other types of state grants and national grants. But the one thing I wanted to mention is it's building off what Kevin and Daniel said, was the fact that if you're trying to grow leadership at a community college, is the idea that faculty are going to be PIs of a grant, because that builds leadership. And then because then they also have to seek support from other parts of the institution. It trains them to do that. Now, I report to the C-suite for the center grant, but I am a department chair. That means I'm a faculty member and I report to my dean. So I literally have two bosses depending on what hat I'm wearing at any one time. So I think it's really important if you want to grow leadership. And the other thing is, anytime you write a grant, even if you have the money elsewhere, a grant like ATE will help you outline the project that you want to do. And you're literally getting a review by your colleagues from around the nation, sometimes in your area. Will this project work? So even if you have funding to do it, writing a grant does a gap analysis for you. So I really suggest and help faculty and others write a grant, even if you have the money or you can find funding elsewhere. It will really help you see how to do that project that you want to do. It will find the gaps for you. And the other thing is, the one thing we have a hard time with is getting people to come back if they get a decline. But getting the decline is not as negative as you think. It's just a gap analysis, and you want the project to work. So write the grant again.
Great. Excellent. Thank you, Linnea. And that's an example right here at Jackson College, right? The blockchain didn't make it the first time. I like that. There was a gap analysis. There was a little counseling going on to make sure they weren't feeling so dejected. And then they got back on the field, wrote it again, and had success. And I know a statistic from NSF is that it takes, on the average, 2.3 tries to get an ATE grant. So, they were right under that 2.3. So, okay, Linnea, we're going to stay with you. We're going to go to the third question here, which is really, the crux of why we decided to do this SIPI cast. Okay, so what are some advice or strategies that you could share with our audience about the continuity of either an ATE grant proposal or a project when administration changes, right? Or grant leadership changes. And typically, when college leadership changes at the highest level, priorities tend to shift. So, and if you have any specific examples that you might be able to share as well. Okay, Linnea.
I can share my personal experience with Innovate Bio because my previous chancellor, Dr. Rhodes, is retired from the position. And now we have Dr. Lowry Hart, Russell Lowry Hart. And to make the transition smoothly, we asked for a meeting with the C-suite and the new individuals, including the chancellor, and he graciously gave that meeting to us. And we outlined exactly what we did on the previous center and we're continuing to do, and then outlined as we were moving forward with the second center. And then we asked, how can we help the school with the next center? And his ideas of what he wants for the community college. So I always remind people that yes, you are PI of a center grant or a project, but number one, you are a faculty member at a community college. You need to understand what is the mission of your community college. Now, people should realize that if you move from one chancellor to the next, that actually we're there to serve students, maybe in different ways with different emphasis. So keep that in mind. And I have to say, having been a dean and understanding the challenges of administration has made me very receptive to remember that I am a faculty member and a PI second, and that it's important to understand what my community college needs to do. Biotech is like this big at my community college. IT is huge. And then, as everybody know, health sciences is really huge at a lot of community college. So you have to keep things in perspective. And if you do, it'll help you understand what your C-suite and the next administration wants through your grant and how you can work together. The other thing I really like what Dr. Richard Rhodes does, he always had me present to the board at least once a year so the board knows what I'm doing too.
Great advice, Linnea. I know when I had my first grant, ATE grant at Union County College, our president had me present to the board as well, just to keep them apprised. We didn't have any change in leadership when I was there, but as you mentioned it, that made me remember that at the time I was such a new PI, I didn't realize the strength in doing that, presenting to the board of directors or trustees. Okay, thank you very much. And I was just thinking we were using the term PI a lot, and some people might not know that that's principal investigator, right? So you are the champion for that grant. So PI is principal investigator. Okay, Dr. Phelan, what advice and strategies can you give us?
Thank you, Dr. Hawthorne. I think your question is really perhaps more palpably felt by smaller rural community colleges than perhaps larger institutions. And I would dare say that the idea of just a transition or change not only affects the project in terms of the institution by virtue of a significant change in senior leadership, but I would dare say that it could also be negatively affected by the PIs who are designed into the system and even business partners that have been part of the project all the way along. So change can happen from anywhere. And I think we need to acknowledge the breadth and depth of that. So if you have that kind of common view that change can come from anywhere and you kind of engage in some scenario planning, you might be able to better ride that out. Now, from my point of view, I think that the more people that are involved in the process, whether manufacturers or businesses, faculty, and certainly administration, makes sense. So if you do have a change in bench strength from the faculty perspective, outside employers, or within the C-suite, you've got people who can kind of step into that place. I will tell you that at Jackson College, although I have been here, I'm in my 24th year, I will tell you that we did have a change in senior leadership. Our chief academic officer left. And so as luck has it, I'm actually wearing two hats. I'm serving as college president and as chief academic officer. So the continuity was okay, but that's not always the case. And so my recommendation is, as you think about it, think holistically about change. It's going to happen. People take jobs, life conditions happen. But think about the multiple tiers in which you design and put these proposals together, and think about if something happened, if there was a change, where would we go? So think about the depth of your grant writer, the business partners, the faculty and staff involved, and upper levels of the C-suite. So if you do have a president change out, at least you've got some continuity through, say, the head of student services or the head of academics, for example.
Great, thank you. That's advice from a president. Thank you very much, Dr. Phelan. Okay, Kevin, you're next, and I'm going to ask you to just go right into the next question as well. All right, so talk about advice and strategies for continuity when leadership changes at your college, and what is the process that you've shared to garner support from new leadership, the chair level, dean level, vice president, president?
So I'll add on to what was just said. What I think I heard and I agree with is it's very situational. when you have this change? Is it external? Did the change happen internally? Did you want a full shift? And so each situation is a little bit unique, and it kind of goes down to your last bullet there, which is communication, advocacy, and support. I think those are the critical elements. I will tell you, having mentored like 70 plus schools now, we bring in about 17 schools every year. 3 every single year have turnover at the highest level at the president. So we see about 18% turnover every single year. And when there's a type turnover that high up, everything just shifts to the right. It doesn't matter what you do, it shifts to the right. So what we do is we kind of put the project, if we're in the proposal stage, on hold with that school until things settle. And typically it's a 6 to 9 month settling time. Someone comes in and learns the ecosystems, and then I would say we go forward with 50% of the proposals from there. But we've seen about 18% turnover, and it shifts to the right no matter how much we engage. There's a fear element that we have to address and let people get to know the new administration. And so we just are patient in that regard. Now, for an active project, which is what the next 2 of your bullets recommend, it goes back to what I said at the very beginning, which is, like you said, communication, advocacy, and support. I think you need to educate whoever comes into that role above you, your leadership, on the importance of the project to the community college. And Linnea said it great. You're first a member of the school, and then you're an NSFPI secondary. So you really need to align your goals with the goals of your bosses and make sure the goals of the AT project align with your bosses. Now, I'll say one really, really, really nice thing about ATE funding is the PI has the ability to not only move budget, with the exception of a couple lines, but as long as you're hitting the objectives of the grant, you can move your activities and the way you do it without any approval. Unlike Department of Labor grants or other grants, you have a ton of flexibility of how you get to your end results. And so if there's a change, work with whoever it is, understand their philosophy, their approach, whether it's outreach is more important or community building is more important, and realign your goals and your budget so that you're in line with the new person. So that's where we go with active projects. So that's what I have to say.
Excellent, Kevin. A man who's been doing this a long time. It's the tricks of the trade. Okay, so Linnea, can you address the last 2 bullets on the slide? What intent of your outcome, sharing that with the change in leadership, chair level, dean level, vice presidential level, president level. And then Kevin already talked about the importance of communication, advocacy, and support by the PI, right, for continuing the ATE project and the change of administration.
Yeah, and I did like the fact that they included there could be a lot of change, not even at the C-suite level, but also even within your grant. And the fact that ATE or NSF grants, yes, you can change how you do your strategies, but to meet your goals. Now, the one thing is, I think I mentioned how presenting to the board, and then the fact that I have a meeting at least twice a year with my bosses in the C-suite. And then I tell them essentially what has happened and what I plan to move forward. Now, I'll tell you something else I'm planning to do that not everyone may think of. So I now have a new C-suite who has not met my leadership team that's part of my grant. So there's a meeting in Austin. I'm inviting my entire leadership team in that represents the nation to meet all of my C-suite. So then they really get to know not only who's the PI of their grant, but who are the co-PIs, who are the other senior personnel, and spend an evening with them to understand what we do nationally, what they do outside of their work on the grant, and then also what are the other possibilities that could be spun off of my ATE, and then possibly other ATEs at the school. So getting them to see broader so they can turn around and ask us for other ATEs and other areas.
Okay. What do you think how important is communication, advocacy, and support by you as a PI,
Well,
to continue the grant?
I think it's number one. And so I do a every 2 weeks, I put out exactly what we've done to my bosses in the C-suite and even to my dean, who does not have any part in this grant except as it relates to my program. I also communicate what we do with all our partners on the grant, and even to the advisory board that's local and to my other groups across the nation. I think communication is number one. If you don't communicate, and you never want to surprise them with anything, you have to communicate anything that's going to possibly happen, negative or positive. And then if you constantly do that, they will help you with whatever you need. The other thing I do is I've really intentionally learned all about all the student services and anything else that were changed as a result of the chancellor moving in, because I could probably align some of my grant goals that I already have. Like, for example, neurodiversity. So we have a major initiative for understanding neurodiversity. Well, that was also part of my grant. So we are supporting that also at my school and getting the training through my school. So I know that sometimes people in grants look for resources outside of their school, but I want to remind people to look for resources within their school that mirror exactly what their grant was planning to do, especially with a change in leadership.
Excellent advice, Linnea. President Phelan, can you address the last two bullets that we've been discussing?
I sure can. Thank you. I think the only items that I would add, in addition to the great points that Linnea and Kevin have already made, is how do you hardwire this into your organization? So if there's a change at the president's level or minimally the senior level, how is it hardwired within your organization? I think one of the best ways you get that done is through the strategic planning process. That's put out there. You share this broadly within your organization to the community and to the board of trustees. So it's in there, and it should be getting regular updates anyway to the board of trustees. So I would think that that's one way in which you can make sure that the intention and the outcomes are still going to be there, regardless if there's transition or not. I also think having the involvement of outside partners that are part of the grant application, keeping them involved, keeping them engaged, because those are the leaders in the community. They're going to be connecting hopefully with the president anyway, or the senior leadership. So when you've got people from additive manufacturing, or they're people working on systems integration, they can come in and connect with your president, or the change in the senior level at the academic side of the house, for example, to make sure that they're asking the questions. I think the idea of having regular updates before the board of trustees continues to prompt the board to make sure that they are hearing updates and that it's not lost. I concur with Linnea's conversation about communication, absolutely important. And I think that happens not only in small ways, but in big ways. Certainly the presentations to the board, but also quarterly reports. We all put out annual reports. We put out newsletter updates. The more that we can keep that out in front helps it survive any changes in the C-suite overall.
Do you mind if I add one more thing that we haven't really talked about? So
Please.
when I'm the PI of a center grant, what if something happens to me, but I still want the grant to stay at ACC? So one thing I think people need to think about is also there could be a change in leadership in the C-suite, but what happens when the PI disappears? The school owns the grant. So I actually work really hard to make sure if anything did happen to me, there's somebody at the school, even if they're not on the grant, and I do bring them on. I bring my co-PIs many times from my school, but if I can't, there is someone here who could take over my job.
That's a great point, Linnea. I know as a co-PI, I've been the PI and also co-PIs. Part of that responsibility of a co-PI is to be able to step in, if only temporarily, to that PI position. So excellent point that we were forgetting about. Okay, we're going to thank you all for your wonderful answers and your advice and strategies. We have about 5 minutes left, so we're going to move on to the question and answer period. I know Dr. Dukes, you've been monitoring the chat. So before we get to those questions, I'm just going to do a quick infomercial. So we have some upcoming CCPI casts, so we want you to save the dates. On October 18th, we're going to be talking about AT mentoring and other resources. So if you're interested in becoming part of a mentoring initiative that's helpful to the success of getting a grant, we'll be talking about those. Kevin talked about Project Vision. We have Mentor Connect. We have Mentor Up. Force is sunsetting, so Force will not be in the mix going forward. In November, on the 15th, how to build institutional capacity once you receive those grants, right? Some institutions don't have grants offices. So what can you do to help build that institutional capacity to support those faculty, those PIs, co-PIs, implementing your grant? And then in January 2025, hard to think about, but we're going to have our third Thought Leaders Dialogue box on dialogue on STEM education. And SIPI STEM partners with the League for Innovation and Community College, and they've been well received. If you're interested in looking at the recordings or the reports that Madeline and Patton put together on the first two SIPI dialogues, they're available on our website. So just save the date of January 24th. We're not sure exactly of the time, but it'll be for 90 minutes. So it's going to be an hour and a half. You can look on the SIPI homepage and you can sign up and register for any of these SIPI casts once they're loaded. And then Fran will also be sending out emails. So if you're on our email distribution, watch for those messages.